Welcome to PR Pals Talk Shop, spinning shoestrings into PR gold. I am your host, Shallon Roth. I am the co-author of award-winning book, How to Succeed in a PR Agency, Real Talk to Grow Your Career and Become Indispensable. I'm also the founder of PR It, which is a communications collective of independent experts, and we do work for agencies and brands on demand. And so during our panel, as the introduction said, we're going to talk about a number of different things, but we're always going to pull it back to how do you creatively do more with less? You know, less time, less budget, less resources, less access. And this panel is a little bit different than probably some other panels that you've seen for a couple of reasons. Firstly, all four of us have worked both in-house and agency side. So we're going to be able to provide a really dual perspective on all the topics we're going to talk about. Also, we're actually pals in real life, which is kind of cool, right? We've known each other for 10 years. We met at an agency in Omnicom, and some of us worked together on accounts, some of us didn't, but we kept in touch, and every year we get together when we're all in New York. I live in London, so not around the corner anymore, but we get together and talk shop, and so we thought it would be really fun if we could share our dinner conversation with you. There'll be less wine, though. Maybe no wine. No wine. Evian water instead. Anyway. All right. So I'd like to introduce you to my pals. I have Alessandra Simkin. She is the Senior Manager of External Communications at, I'm going to say it wrong, Danone. Okay, did it right. Okay, fab. North America. And you know them, of course, for yogurt, water, all the good fancy stuff we like to have. So I could go on and on about Allie's professional accomplishments and also my other pals, but instead I invite you to just kind of find us on LinkedIn. We can chat more there if you're interested in our career histories. Instead, I'm going to share one fun fact about each one of them. So Allie actually just recently became an Italian citizen, and she is flying solo tomorrow with her new baby to Italy for an extended family visit, which is really brave. Real brave. Okay. And then to her left is Andrea Rowley. She's the Interim Director of Marketing and Communications at the Center on Addiction. And that is a nonprofit that's transforming how America addresses addiction. So fun fact about Andrea, she actually grew up in Burlington, Vermont, and Bernie Sanders was actually the town mayor. So one of her first jobs was interning for him on Capitol Hill when he was a congressman. Kind of random, right? Random and cool.
In the press office.
In the press office. PR straight from the start. Right from the start. I like that. So last, but definitely not least, is Erin Graves. She's the Senior Director of Corporate Affairs at Epizyme, which is a Boston-based biotech that focuses on epigenetic medicines. And you guys are going to love this one about Erin because, like, we're all PR people, right? So she was actually featured on the cover of New Jersey Monthly magazine while snowshoeing. I know you guys are jealous, right? All right. So on to the good stuff. So we're going to kick off with some serious PR gold. Previously at one of our dinners, relatively recently, Allie was telling us about this really cool campaign she did for Evian called Drip Drop. And I think that there's some really interesting learnings in there because when you think of brands like Evian, you think they have really, really, really deep pockets and they can afford to do all sorts of cool stuff with like big brand name influencers and you know there's just no end to the budget. They can just make it fancy and glittery. But actually, Allie did have a small budget and what she was able to do was pretty amazing. So Allie, do you want to kind of just give our new friends an overview of Drip Drop, what it is, what inspired it, and yeah, just a few details.
Yeah, that sounds great. So every year, Evian launches a limited edition bottle. You see this year's right here. We've been doing this for more than a decade, and we collaborate with fashion designers. We were kind of one of the early brands to do these collaborations with the fashion industry, and so that's something that's really part of our heritage. So this year, I learned that we were working with Virgil Abloh, and we worked with him to design this bottle, but he's also working with us on sustainable innovation and design. So there's a lot of different things coming out from our work with him. When I found out that we were working with him, I thought to myself, we got to do something really cool for this. So originally we were going to launch this bottle during Fashion Week, but the bottles need to come from France, and sometimes that can create logistical considerations. And so we realized that the timing would be a little later, and so we went to our agency And actually, we sought out an agency specifically to work with us on this because we thought we needed a unique agency. And actually, we worked with Small Girls PR. You just heard from their CEO. So it was kind of, we didn't plan that, but it happened. And so we went to them, and we wanted to do an event that was on its own, not tied to Fashion Week because of the timing. And so that's when we came up with the idea of the Evian Drip Drop. So what we did was we took inspiration from the fashion industry. We've been doing this for a long time, but we kind of did it in a new way. In streetwear culture, it's common for a new sneaker to get dropped, to rent out a blank space, make it fancy, and drop that sneaker. The lines will form around the block. Lots of posts will be shared. There will be hype. And so we thought, why can't we do this for Evian? And it was a little scary. We didn't know how it was going to go, but we did it, and it was amazing.
Awesome. So obviously Virgil is a really big name influencer. So how were you able to work with the global team in order to leverage him to amplify your event without increasing your budget?
Yeah, so one of the big tips that I took away from this is that you have more resources available to you than you think. So I work on the US communications for Evian, so that means I'm a market person. There's a global team who kind of manages the different activations that we do globally and kind of set the tone for what the brand is going to do around the world. And so, when we decided that we wanted to do something, it wasn't something that we had scoped for the year. And Evian does a lot of different things. We work with the US Open, New York Fashion Week. These are some of the bigger ticket items. So then when we had something that we wanted to do more spontaneously, we had to kind of make a case for it and find the budget to do it. So one of my first stops was to our global team to say, what can we leverage from what's already existing to help make something work here? And so, for example, Virgil's relationship was already set in stone, but we went to him with the idea and told him about it, and he was super excited to post and share and, promote on his own channels. We also, it's from that, but down to simple things like the design files. So like you see this bag, we were able to very easily get this printed from the great work that the global team had already done. We didn't have to recreate a million things and create excess budget on that front. The other thing that I think is really important on the US side, we looked for an agency specific to this, and we made sure that they had every capability that it was going to take to launch this from planning to execution. So every single thing we needed along the way, they were able to do. So when you're trying to do an event like this and you want to kind of maximize your resources, keep your budget tight, make sure you evaluate your agency partner to ensure that they have every single thing that you need. And if they don't have it, find out, well, what's it going to take? Because when you have kind of 7 different partners, each having their own budget, that adds up. And so really having kind of a single partner helped us to streamline things. And we were able to really prioritize along the way and say, okay, well, we have this, but then we can't have that, and instead let's do this, and that really made it easy. We kind of had that single point of contact.
Speaking of strategically using one's budget, do you want to share the really interesting fountain example of how you need to prioritize? Also, do you want to show everyone this really cool bottle? Do you guys want to see this bottle?
If you haven't seen it already.
Oh, sorry. Bag.
Yeah. So this is the bottle, and I'll get into what we did to kind of make this really special for the event. We sort of had a couple of realizations in the planning for this. This is a bottle of water, and we're asking people to take time out of their day to line up for it. We need to make this event really cool. I know the bottle is very cool, and it is only available in very limited quantities. So, that in and of itself might motivate people to line up, but people are busy. So one of the things that we did was we had Virgil sign 10 of the bottles, which was something that, we asked him, would you be willing to do this? And he was super excited about it. And each one he signed in this awesome pink marker, and everyone was really unique. So the 10 people who got those are really lucky. They're super cool. So we were like, how are we going to give these away? These 10 signed bottles. And we were like, let's replicate the water fountain at Evian Le Bon in this event, and people will run tickets through, and the tickets will have text appear when the water activates the text.
So cool.
So we were really into this idea. But then when it came down to it, replicating that fountain in a way that was not chintzy, but good, it was going to cost a lot of money. So what we did, instead of doing that, so we nixed this fountain replica. We ended up using the resources to bring an influential DJ in, which helped make the VIP hour more special. And then we still had the fountain feature, but it was kind of just like a modern block fountain that fit in with the overall aesthetic of the event. So this was the kind of thing that we were able to really partner with our agency on. I didn't have to make 40 phone calls. I made one and said, look, we're not going to do the fountain. How else should, we're thinking about bringing in this DJ. Do you think that makes sense? And what can we do to like make the most of these two things with this decision? And it was, one phone call, maybe 3, not 40 though.
Nice. All right. So one of the other topics, we're going to move on a little bit from Evian actually, but it's like such a cool case that if you guys have more questions about it and we don't have enough time during the Q&A, you can find Allie during the coffee break, which I think is right after this session. Also, we have to figure out who we're going to give this bottle to. One person is going to walk away with this cool bottle. Anyway, so another topic that comes up quite often, in addition to sharing cases and best practices and stuff at our dinners, is we talk a lot about stakeholder engagement, which I know kind of sounds jargony, but you know what? When I was agency side, and these ladies too, we're like, oh yeah, our clients are in meetings and they're busy and they only have like a couple hours to review materials and whatnot because they're engaging stakeholders, whatever that means. You know what though? When we all went in-house, we were like, oh my goodness, our entire day is consumed with meetings. All we are doing is taking what the agency tells us and selling it in to like 100 people and getting them to row in the same direction so we can actually get a campaign off the ground. And agency side, you just don't have an appreciation for that. So I think what might be helpful, since we've been on kind of both sides of the coin, is to share well, what can you do in-house to kind of make that a little bit easier based on our experience? And then the other side is, what can you guys do if you're in an agency to be a better partner? You're already probably great partners, but to be even better partners while your clients are spending a lot of time stakeholder engagement. So Andrea, I'm going to kick it over to you. Tell us a little bit about how you approach navigating difficult stakeholders and bringing them on board to move your campaigns forward.
I think everything Shallon said rings completely true in my organization. Navigating difficult stakeholders is very difficult. I think that there's 3 things that I use in-house to really help move things along. The first is, it's very simple, but really meeting with stakeholders and understanding their goals. I think that's essential. We're in a space right now at my organization, Center on Addiction, recently merged with Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. You may know them for their PSAs and their fried egg ad from the million years ago, but we're a new organization.
It was the 80s. The 80s are a million years ago.
Many years ago.
Andrea.
Not that many. And yes, so their iconic PSAs, and so together as a combined organization, the organization is meant to look at how we can transform how our nation addresses addiction, as Shallon mentioned. So we have all of these stakeholders coming together from 2 different cultures, 2 different organizations. How can we all kind of continue to row in the same direction is very time consuming, but I start with the basics and go back to meeting with the stakeholders, understanding their objectives. There's a lot of them. It's time consuming. It consumes most of my day. And then the second big key item is really to listen. If you listen to all of what they're talking about, you can really start to understand their objectives are and what makes them tick and who are their stakeholders and who are they trying to impress and what do they need to do. And so then that leads me to the third point, and doing all of this and sitting with them and learning and taking the time to really understand what they're trying to do. You build a lot of trust with these different stakeholders. And I think that is essential, especially in our situation where we're merging 2 organizations together. When those moments come when we get a really exciting opportunity, as a nonprofit, we have a lot of other companies wanting to partner with us. Opioids is a huge issue in our country, as is addiction. So we have a lot of other organizations wanting to work with us, which is really exciting. But being able to assess those things really quickly and turn things around on the time schedule that we need to really all of that comes together by having done all this stakeholder work internally so that when we have those decisions to make, I understand all the different stakeholders' needs and wants and desires, and we can make those decisions quickly, seamlessly, or as seamlessly as possible, even though we know it's still really hard to do.
Yeah, and just to elaborate a little bit on something Andrea said about listening to stakeholders, often when they tell you what their goal is, you're like, oh, that's kind of actually disconnected from what you just asked me tactically. So it's always really important to go back to the why. Like, why do you want me to do this? Or why is getting that particular result important to you? Because often they just want what they want, but it actually doesn't ladder back up to the goal. And so that's one way to also start to manage their expectations, is to just question them and bring them back. And that also, as Andrew was saying, mindful listening, which then builds enormous trust. So then when you do disagree with them, be like, actually, it sounds like you more want this. They tend to be more receptive. So on that note, Erin, what can, looking at the other side, what can agencies do to really elevate their client service and really help you and support you while you're going through all these conversations with, like marketing and sales and C-level executives and maybe even the board?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything Shallon said at the beginning part with regard to on the agency side, when you are working with your clients, moving over to the other side, I don't think I fully appreciated how nuanced it would be. And actually, I joke around a lot that when you see in the job description for an in-house position, and they talked about being able to function within a highly matrixed organization, you realize, I don't even know what that means, but sure, I can work with a lot of people. But then you realize how many different departments you actually coordinate and work with on a daily basis. And so what I do a lot now is even educating my internal colleagues about what corporate affairs can do for them, and specifically within the communications realm, which is we're really a partner function and a support function. So we're a partner function in that there's work that we do that we drive forward, and that's when our agencies come to us with great campaign ideas and we can execute them on the timelines that we define in a way that ladders up to our corporate objectives. And then we're also a support function. I work in the healthcare pharmaceutical industry, so a lot of the time I'm working with my clinical colleagues who are telling me, we have this data coming up at a medical congress, or we have a publication coming up, so how are we going to support and come up with a program that helps, again, achieve those either corporate goals or brand goals? And then related to that, I would say there's both the macro and the micro level of detail and moving projects forward, right? So oftentimes, as Shallon mentioned, we're in meetings, we're so focused on the immediate things that we need to do to support the people that we work with every day that we really are heavily relying on our agency partners to really help us get everything done. And there's those moments where you're so focused on the immediate deadlines ahead of you that I'm not even thinking about what's happening next quarter, or the fact that I'm going to have 2020 planning that's going to have to happen, and oh my gosh, then the budget's going to have to come due just at that point in time, right?
This is how agencies get that, that email from clients where they're like,
Exactly.
Hey, can I have my 2020 strategy in 12 hours? Thanks.
We actually got to give them 2 weeks, I would like to say, for the first time. I'm like, can I get that in 2 weeks? Just rough estimates, it's okay. And, I think part of that then too becomes being able to have that forward-looking kind of just, everything kind of follows the same cadence. So over time, you kind of know when and where things will happen. And part of having a great agency partnership is ideally you're working together year after year. And so these things are cyclical. Yeah.
Awesome. And also, of course, quality of work.
Yes,
Is
sorry.
always, no, it's all right.
The important thing.
Yeah.
Just
You
proof your work. There's nothing worse than getting a memo where your name is spelled wrong, or your executive's name is spelled wrong, or even worse, your brand, and then you have to sit in meetings and apologize profusely. And, from time to time we all make mistakes, it happens. But over time, if they're repeated errors, it slowly chips away at my confidence that you understand our business, and I can take something at the 11th hour and go run it into a meeting and feel confident.
My top tip for proofing, this is totally random and off piece, but read it out loud to yourself. I know that seems really weird, but it is the best. You catch everything when you read it out loud. Your mind just fills in things otherwise. Okay, that was totally random. Back on track. So while we were talking about stakeholder engagement, we'd be remiss to not touch on expectation management, because I feel like that is just the bane of our existence, right? It doesn't matter if you're in-house or your agency side, you have to manage expectations of people who have varying degrees of understanding of how public relations and communications works, what it's going to bring for them, what it's going to do for them, and what the results should look like. And so I'm sure for all the folks in the audience, whether in-house or agency, again, it's the same. You get asks and you're like, that's a really interesting timeline. Even if I moved heaven and earth and I was God, I wouldn't be able to do that. Or that your budget is just incredibly tight for what they want to deliver on. And then, of course, my favorite, which the students in the audience will not have gotten this, but once you get into PR, you will, especially because you're young. They're like, oh, you know social media. How do you make my content go viral? You're just like, it just doesn't work like that. So Allie, I'm sure Allie is in a consumer brand, right? So she gets this all the time. How do you make my content go viral? So Allie, what do you do with these stakeholders who ask you kind of crazy stuff? How do you bring them along in the journey so that way they still want to fund your campaigns?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing is that I try to make it really simple and break it down for them. So I start with the first question, which is this thing newsworthy? That question I keep in my own head because people don't like to have that question spout back at them after they ask that. But sometimes I will kind of bring it to them and say, like, is this something you would share on your own social channels? And if they have some like doubt or reservation about that, then that's when I can start to kind of dig in. If they don't, and it is something that is really newsworthy, for example, we really felt like our work with Virgil and especially dropping this bottle was going to be something that would be able to gain traction. We had a really good feeling about it. But I didn't think that like everyone in the world was going to see it or care about it. So, I looked at my internal clients and said, who exactly is our audience and what do we want them to do? Our audience was a millennial jet set. We wanted them to come to this event and we wanted them to share about it. So, we picked a space in Soho where I know a lot of those people work because they work at agencies that are located in Soho. So I knew that they could take time to line up for this bottle and get it. Or maybe they're tourists that are shopping at the streetwear store. Virgil's store, Off-White, is right around the corner from the pop-up shop that we picked to do this. We brought in a DJ. That wasn't something that we had planned to do, but we decided, this is something that can bulletproof this because, when in PR, whenever it's, something that you need to bank on people lining up, like what if it rains? Then you just did all this work for nothing. So we were like, we're gonna get this DJ and have a VIP hour and invite certain people to the VIPs. For example, we work with Luca Sabat. We invited him to come too. So that way it would kind of make it attractive. So then when we were able to look at it, yes, we did reach our audience. We got coverage in New York Magazine's The Cut, coverage in GQ. All of these things were indicators that for all intents and purposes, like we did what we needed to do. Did like my mom see it? Yeah, because I sent it to her. But she wouldn't have seen it otherwise. And, but it wouldn't matter because it wouldn't have motivated her to actually go and like seek out this bottle. What we did learn eventually is that people were seeking out this bottle. We learned that from our customers. And that's the best person to learn something like that from because people then are motivated. Like, I need to do more PR stuff because my customers love it. So, that's what worked for us. If it's not newsworthy, that's when it's a little bit more difficult. It's not just a question of, like, how do we measure this? It's a question of, can we make this thing newsworthy? Can we step up that commitment? Can we add an influencer? Can we bring a notable voice to kind of give this a little bit more excitement? If I really feel like there's no way to save this thing, whatever it may be, I usually try to ask my clients, and I'm in-house, but I still call everybody I work with my client. I think that's just a good way to treat people. So I just ask them, what else you got going on? Like, tell me a little bit about what's happening. And sometimes there will be some nugget that's there that they have that's important that they don't think is newsworthy, but then I find out about it, I'm like, that's really cool. Like this is a perfect example. We do this bottle every year. We don't always do PR around it in the US, but this year we had the right cultural moment, the right partner, the right kind of thing happening with the streetwear scene and all these drops happening in Soho, and it was just very cool, and the timing worked, and we kind of hit the bullseye. But other years I might not say that. Last year our big push was around the US Open because we had a new marketing campaign drop at that exact same time. So, sometimes it can be uncomfortable to ask questions, but when you get more comfortable with being a mindful listener and learn to kind of ask questions in a way that gets people to talk and tell you what they're working on, you can really find some gems, and then they're not wasting their time chasing something that's definitely not going to go viral, and you're working with them on things that are more meaningful and get better results.
Yeah, and also when someone feels, I mean, I guess just a human thing, right? When you feel like you're listened to, you gotta get less riled up when by the end of the conversation, you're not gonna get a media campaign out of it. So something Erin said to me last night that I thought was kind of awesome, because as you know with PR, you can do everything right and still not get the result you're expecting, which is that you pay for coverage with advertising and you pray for coverage with PR. I just thought that was fantastic.
That is true. It's so true.
So, Erin, I know that you're kind of in a different camp than Allie because when you're working in a biotech, they don't have as many news or shiny marketing campaigns. So, like, there might be, you know, a data announcement at a congress that is kind of just incremental from the year before, but to that company, it's like that's the hot new thing, right? So they need to do something about it. So how do you manage stakeholder expectations when, you know, data or the announcement isn't that newsworthy?
Well, I think it's hard because most everyone, and especially when you're dealing with the executives, everybody has a social media channel, right? They're active, whether it's just their LinkedIn for professional networking, they maybe see posts coming about, or, you know, their kids will tell them about like this, you know, we should be on Instagram, and you're thinking, we're, you know, a biopharmaceutical company, whether you're a big one or a small one, like, is that really the place where the people that we really want to connect and speak with, is that really going to be the place where we get the best engagement? And, you know, what I often try to do is, you know, through the course of the year, you know, we have our corporate objectives, we have our messages, we have the various milestones that we are going to promote and speak about. And it's really this idea of like, what is the cadence of news and information that we want out there? And I liken it to, it's kind of this steady stream, right? People know who we are as a company. They know about the molecules in our pipeline. They know when those important milestones are happening. And then when we have a disclosure, you know, you kind of have a bit more of those spikes because people are focused. It's ASCO. People are going to be looking for your data because you have an oral presentation, or, oh my goodness, if you're part of a plenary session, maybe ASCO will include you in their press conference. And that in and of itself adds that credibility that you want. But, you know, most of the time you might have, if you could find something that's viral, I think the best example that many of you may be familiar with is all of the news that came about with Roseanne when she sent that tweet that got her kicked off her television show, and she blamed it on Ambien, and Sanofi took advantage of that moment to say, as far as we know, you know, that is not a side effect of taking Ambien, which, great for Sanofi. They were able to hop into that moment in the zeitgeist, if you will. But at the end of the day, you're not going to see people then running to go talk to their doctor to get a script for Ambien. So it's a struggle. So I think the best that you can do is continue to, you know, I think leverage those moments where you have something to say and you issue that press release and you have some great media outreach and you're promoting it on social and your employees are engaging with it, or you have thought leaders at ASCO taking pictures of the slides and sharing it on social, because that's the credibility that you would rather have. That's the conversation that I think is ultimately more meaningful.
Definitely. And so what goes hand in hand with stakeholder expectation management? Well, measurement, of course, which gets all of our blood going. We have a lot of lively discussions about measurement. And I saw a muck rack in the corner over there. I don't know, did you guys see their State of PR 2019 report? Anyone? Yeah? Did you see that 72% of PR pros cite measurement still as their biggest challenge? No? Yeah? So, you know, it's funny because we think we've been measuring for years. We got this down. But, I mean, actually, like 10 years ago, PR was genuinely tricky to measure. There was no data, or it was expensive to get. And, yeah, it's just, it's not surprising. I mean, we have the Barcelona principles now, which is the gold standard of measuring in our industry, and it pushes us away from those easy-to-access vanity metrics that we now have. But the trick is, even though we all now want to measure campaign performance within the context of business objectives, shockingly, our clients don't want to do that. Why don't they want to do that? So that's something that I faced when I was in-house, and I think, Erin, do you also find this pretty tricky?
Yeah, I think It's really two-pronged for me in working with my agency, whether it's a year-end wrap-up metrics report or it's something campaign specific. I really rely on my agency to be the ones to tell me best practices, trends, dig into how things are performing, and sharing with me, like, how do we want to tweak this moving forward? I mean, obviously, especially when we're thinking about digital social, you can do a lot of things in real time, which is great, to course correct or message refine if you need to. But when it comes time for actually then taking that report with, the dashboard and then the details underneath, when I give it to my executive team, they get the high-level overview. They still want the dashboard. They want the top-line metrics. What they ultimately are looking for is, does this work? Are we on the right track? And is this still a good investment for us? And that is that's at a high level. Perhaps you're presenting it, at a board meeting or kind of talking about next steps, what you're doing. And then the real opportunity for education happens throughout the course of the year when you are getting ready for ASCO or you have an approval coming up and you're saying, I've done all this, research, and here's what our peer companies are doing, or here's how we're moving the needle in this meaningful way around FDA approval and launch opportunities, and really just, it's really picking and choosing when is the best time to go into the detail and when is the best time to just give them what they need to know, because everybody is really busy and they don't have the time and the attention despite the best of intentions. Another saying, I don't want to be the sayings person, but the best advice I was ever given from a boss a few years back, which was, especially when you're talking with executives, CEO, business unit presidents, whatever it might be, which is just tell them the time, don't tell them how to make the watch. Really simple.
I mean, yeah, but you know what? Just like on that saying, I'm just thinking, I mean, wouldn't you want to know, like, if your goal is to sell more widgets, how your PR is helping you sell more widgets than the fact that your PR got you a media impact score that's different depending on which software you decided to use to pull your placements down? I mean, I just think contextualization is so important. But I mean, I agree with what Erin's saying. I had the same experience. They're like, give me a shiny dashboard. I want to know how many impressions there were and what the tone pull through was.
Well, and it's the time and the place, right? It's this idea of, if there is time and you have the set time to actually have those conversations, great. But if it's, end of a quarter and they're like, Erin, tell me what time it is, I'm not going to be like, well, first I got all the parts and here's all the things together. It just, it's totally. Picking and choosing. When are they ultimately also going to be most receptive to digging into the details with you, because it ultimately makes all of us better at what we do, because they could have insights as well or approach it from an entirely different way, because I'm so into the weeds of it.
Absolutely. So Allie's coming at it from a much different perspective because she can actually link her results to sales, which is really tricky in a lot of industries where you just don't have the data to do it because it's not in real time. Like when Erin and I both have deep healthcare background, and it's like, I can't really link that to more diagnostic tests because we're not going to get Medicaid data for a year. But anyways, Allie can link it directly to sales. And so why don't you tell them how you report results, which is pretty cool.
Sure. And I would say sometimes we can link it to sales.
Okay, I set that up a little bit strong.
Yeah. But, and the way that it gets linked to sales, especially, for example, with Evian, is through anecdotal feedback from our customers. So with the Drip Drop, for example, our goal was to create hype and desirability and to make the limited edition launch something that people look forward to year after year, and use this moment with Virgil as an opportunity to kind of like reignite that spark. So, we were able to measure that through the traditional ways, through impressions. We had a list of outlets that we were like, okay, these are the places that we want to see coverage in, and we kind of mapped back against that. So all the traditional stuff that you would normally see. But the real success and what made us feel really good about having done the event was hearing from our customers that, yes, there were people coming in and looking for this bottle. When my sales team told me, for my sales team, that's like, those are our day-to-day metrics. If the customers aren't telling us that people are coming in to buy the product, then that's a problem. But for a PR person to hear that the customers really felt that this event drove people to do that, that was huge for us. So, I couldn't say that the dollar amount, how much the PR impacted the dollar amount, but we did get that sort of anecdotal feedback that was super, super valuable.
Yeah, those are all good points. And Andrea, I know you want to throw your 2 cents in here because Andrea is like real hot on measurement, and she has a much bigger digital background than the rest of us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's been your observations as all this measurement stuff has come to pass, and there's opposing schools of view.
Sure, I think you're still on. There's just, as we all know, so much velocity and volume of data. We're all living this. We're being asked, what can we do with this data? How does it impact our business? How can we create outcomes from this and strategies, and what does that mean? What levers should we push to kind of analyze what this all means in the larger context? I think what we've been doing is really trying to take a step back. I think it still starts with the tried and true, trying to figure out what are your goals with this data, what are you trying to measure? It's still really important. At our organization, as part of the merger, we've taken a step back and thought of this as a really big opportunity to reorient and re-engineer our team in-house to really prioritize data. So we are in the process of structuring us with this content data insights team, which we're actually working. We have a healthcare data analytics team in-house, and we're working with that team to build out our capability there more and beyond kind of just looking at those numbers and seeing what that means, and really actually taking a deeper dive with the data scientists to really truly look at and mine that data for true strategic insights beyond kind of what you're seeing, numbers up or down, and what does that mean, and then bringing it to a broader ecosystem. So at our organization, of course, we have our earned media, but we also have all of our own channels, and then we also have a helpline. So we actually help families looking for services for themselves around their children and family members who are impacted by addiction. So our helpline services, we have data there. And so trying to bring all of that, this large ecosystem of data together along with our paid advertising, it's a big effort, but it's really important to bring that all together and analyze it regularly and report that back up to our board of directors as well as internally to all of our various executives. So that's where we're at in the process. And it's really exciting and important, but I still always kind of take a step back and think about how important this is in the context of realizing that gut still really matters in our field, that you can't predict the future through data all the time. You can have some inclinations and some ideas, and you can test things faster, and you can look at messaging quicker, but you still, Ali said, was this campaign, it was scary, was it gonna work? I don't know. So you can't test for that. You can't test for something that has never been done. And a lot of what we do in PR is doing something that has never been done before. So I think it's really important to look at all that, make it part of your business, but also still leave room for innovation and creativity.
I love the never been done before concept, because something that I say at work is like, if it's been done before, it probably isn't newsworthy, and we probably need to figure out something else to do.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
Also what Andrew said, super wise words, especially as we're going into this age of artificial intelligence, right? More and more media monitoring and where we're getting our metrics from is getting pulled by robots that we're training. And it's they don't know sarcasm or context. And so it's just going to really skew our metrics. So if we're making decisions on future campaigns based on that, still, as Andrew said, guts, super important, super important. All right, so we've had a lot of deep conversations. How about some rapid fire tips? That's always helpful, right? Good little quick takeaway. All right, so ladies, let's share with our friends, what's your top tip to get the most out of your resources? And we'll just go straight down the line. Don't even wait for me, just do it.
Perfect. So I hate that I'm saying this, but have a good deck at the very beginning of a project and use that deck to bring different stakeholders into what you're doing. For those people who don't know what a deck is, it is a group of slides that explain what you are doing. Honestly, if you have that from the start and people understand what you're trying to do and they can get that sense that it's going to be something successful, they're going to want to get involved. They will want to help you because everybody wants to be a part of the thing that's the successful thing. So have your deck, have your points, and get people on board.
My quick thing is work with your agency as a sounding board. I think our organization, we have so many smart, amazing people. I think I'm one of the few people there without 5 PhDs. So we're really smart. We understand addiction. We know the space inside and out. A lot of times we're so in it that we can't realize what the rest of the world knows about this disease and where they're at in their journey of learning about it. So just as we have ideas and come up with new concepts, just quickly gut checking it with the agency, having them help us bring it back and realize that sometimes we're 5 steps ahead of where the rest of the public is really helpful.
Step away from your email and go talk to people, whether you're in-house, going and meeting with different groups, or you're an agency person picking up the phone and calling your client. I call my agency person all the time if I'm like running between meetings, because there might be little insights that I've gleaned that I can just pass along in a 5-minute conversation that helps her think about our business better.
Those are all really good tips. So we're going to do one more round, and this one's going to be, leave you feeling uplifted. So we all have to, of course, execute flawlessly, and we have to be the best budget steward. We have to always be on call. I mean, let's face it, we're spending a whole day in this PR conference. We must all really love PR or really want to get into it. But the thing is that despite stellar performance and just loving what you do, because of the always-on nature of PR, you kind of get to this point at some point in your career that you feel a little bit maybe overworked, maybe a little bit undervalued. So, ladies, what's your uplifting advice for anyone who is in this point in their career?
Sure. I would say that you're not alone. And the way to not feel that you're alone is to bring in the points of view of other people around you, whether it be colleagues, peers, friends, family, if it's appropriate. The whole point of PR is to be relevant. So if you're not including other people in what you're doing, it's really hard to actually be relevant, especially if you're feeling overburdened and alone. So definitely try to bring people inside. You'll feel less burdened, and it'll be fun along the way.
My piece of advice is to take pride in your work. I think many days we do things tirelessly in the trenches, and we're in it, we're doing that media list, and we're like, who's going to notice or care? It's hard to do that. I think take pride in your work. It's so important because there's that day or that moment when it does come around, you do get that email, you do this award-winning campaign, it does pay off. So I think that's really important. And also spend time with people who get it. That's why you're all here today. That's why the 4 of us still make time living in different countries and cities to get together and talk about PR.
Also, so we don't end up having our husbands divorce us when we keep talking about work.
Yes, very true.
For me, I think with the overwork thing, a lot of people who work in PR, they are perfectionists. They want to, there's always something to do. So if you do not kind of create boundaries for yourself for your time, it is really easy to give work everything and have nothing left over. So I would say advocate for yourself, set the boundaries that you need. It's really popular, LinkedIn articles all the time are talking about self-care and really framing that out. But I think if you do that, because every single person that I know that works in this industry is super passionate and committed about what we do, that if you do carve out time for yourself and take a weekly yoga class or take a language class like I do, you actually are able to step away, and nobody comes to you and says, you know what, you're just not working as hard as you used to. You are entitled to have a life. You are entitled to love what you do and give it your all, or pull that all-nighter or all-weekender when the crisis or issue comes about, but you're entitled to have your life.
So if anyone needs an additional pep talk, we will be here during the coffee break if you have questions, because we used up all our time because we're just the worst. We just can't help. Okay, so I guess come find us in the coffee break if you have questions, and I guess the first person who comes and finds us and asks a really smart question gets the bottle. So there's some motivation for you. All right, thank you guys.